Hi everyone. When Matt and I were in Manitoulin Island, we had the chance to speak with Maja, the founder and owner of the organic restaurant Maja's. They have an extensively developed garden growing a wide variety of different produce, which allows them to get up to 80% of their menu sourced straight from their backyard.
So just before I went
Maja's story about moving to Canada from Switzerland, hitchhiking across the country, and living off the grid for many years in Manitoulin is fascinating and full of wisdom. We hope you enjoy our conversation.
So just before I went to bed, I said, because I thought of the seasons and the sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I came, this was all new to me.
Yeah.
And I was already an adult.
Mm-hmm.
So then you kind of really consciously absorb the sounds and the smells and the things, maybe more so than when you grew up in it and it's just you take it for granted.
Yeah.
So for me, the most astonishing, we came in spring, and the most astonishing was that the pipers or peepers or whatever you call them, the little frogs, the spring peepers. And I didn't know what it was, but all of a sudden they started in the evening, and I said, it was so loud where we were. I said, what is this? And my husband said, frogs. I said, you got to be kidding me. Like, they were so loud.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So that was my spring sound for sure. And then the birds with the long legs, with the ring around. They're on the beach.
Oh, sandpipers.
Sandpipers.
Mm-hmm.
And we had them there, and they have this distinct, really shrill peeping going on because they run away from where their eggs are on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
So
Killdeer,
Killdeer, yeah. They were really, their sound, it's to me represents spring, the spring sound of the Norse. But that's a rare occasion because you got to be on a very special place because they are nearly distinct, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were near South Bay Mouse, about 8 kilometers north. So that was my spring sound for sure. And then summer, these chainsaw-like insect that sound like a chainsaw up in the trees.
Cicadas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. The summer sound. It's got to be hot. It's got to be just gorgeous, right? So that's the summer sound. And then the fall sound for me, because we were off the grid, was stacking wood and the geese overhead. So it was the smell of the wood, and so you lift and you go cluck, and then wood on wood, cluck, wood on wood, cluck, above it, and the blue sky, and cluck, and and cluck, and that's my fall sound.
Mm-hmm.
And then winter, deep winter, showed me the first time that nothing makes a sound. There is a sound to silence, to complete another silence, because usually you have the waves and stuff that make some, or the wind in the trees, in the leaves. But when there's no wind and the lakes are frozen, it is so enormously quiet in certain parts of the north. You can hear the quietness.
Mm-hmm.
Have you experienced that?
I think, a little bit.
It is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And then the sight in the winter when the moisture freezes, and you can see the Milky Way at night, and all those little crystals of moisture filigrating in the sky, is just, it's like fairy tale come true. It's just unbelievably beautiful. And then the early spring up here, when the lakes thaw, I don't know if you had an experience that when the wind brings the thaw, so that the rain and the melting, the sun, creates these sort of crystal, these sort of sticks, like the ice breaks up in big thick sticks. And when that comes with the wind, when the wind crashes the ice onto the shoreline, and all these icicles that form the ice fall apart, it goes in a very eerie sort of way. You'd have to maybe Google it and get that sound. I'm sure somebody had made that sound effect. It is the most beautiful thing. It's. I would nearly put it to like under the world wonders.
Yeah.
Just the sound alone, it's so intense.
And that's the sound on the lake when it's
When
it's beginning to
when it
thaw,
breaks up.
breaking up.
When it actually breaks up, and there is like, it's usually 2-3 hours when that happens, and you have to be really careful, because I've seen rocks the size of this, half as thick as this, moved from the red umbrella to here in less than 30 minutes. Like,
Oh wow. Just shifting
the
on
pushing ice just pushes whole shoreline. Our shoreline, literally, it pushed up rocks each year, rocks, and each year it made another mound. And so when you looked at our shoreline, it had like a mound, and then a flat, and then another mound, another flat, over the years, right?
Yeah.
And created more land. So when you're in a place, you kind of feel, if you're not influenced from all these other things, no TV, no phone, right? You start to notice all these things that nature does. Like we noticed the 7-year cycle of the fox and the rabbits. So you have all of a sudden, you see all kinds of foxes coming, and then no more rabbits. And then you see, slowly but surely, when you see all kinds of rabbits again, then it's top of the rabbit, then the foxes increase again, and then because then it's really the cycle, that slow breath that the earth takes, and that the animals and that rhythm, you start to understand it when you're long enough in a place. So that's what the North showed me, coming from a city. I'm a city person, right? I grew up as a city person, city in Europe. So those are my sounds of the North. But I think every person has different sounds of the North.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not your average person's experience, right?
So do you think people who live in cities are more disconnected from that sense of place? Or do you think they just have different sounds that they listen to themselves now?
I think they no doubt have different sounds, because sound is a powerful thing, right? And the vision is a powerful thing. However, I do believe they're disconnected. Yeah, I do believe they're that understanding of where we come from and what we need to survive and what it takes to create, to have what we need to survive. That understanding, it's really not there. It's so convenient. The food is so convenient. It's not even appreciated anymore. It's in out. That whole there's a huge disconnect and a huge. That's why our farmers don't get paid what they need to, and that's why people are so wasteful, so incredibly wasteful. When you grow food, when you have to bend down to plant each bean that afterwards gives you a handful of beans, you don't throw that. You don't pick the bean, put it in a crisper, and let it rot.
Yeah. Exactly.
You use it. So that's kind of. But there's many other sounds that. But those are the most influential ones when I came.
Which is really, it's very poetic how those sounds can like sort of shape or be like the harbinger of a whole season or represent the whole season for you in just one sound.
Yeah.
I definitely had sounds, or even like music. When I listen to some music, it reminds me of a place or a time in my life. It's kind of like that.
Yeah, or a smell, right? Like there's certain places on Manitoulin that smell like the place where I was, and it will put me right back there. There's certain density of trees that have a certain output, comfort, or whatever they exude, that will soothe us and will bring us home, right? And I think you will have that, unfortunately, like if you come from a city, you probably find solace in the smell of the rain on the asphalt. Right? You know that smell, right? It's beautiful, but it's a city smell, right? There's many other things, right? Coming past the bakery, or
Yeah.
coming back past the subway, right? So when you smell those things, it might catapult you home.
Yeah.
I get sent back to Korea with the intense garbage and sewage smell in
Yeah.
an alleyway.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah, yeah.
it's Korea.
Yeah.
City.
And then there's topography. Like when I'm across in mountains, I feel like I'm hugged because I grew up in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
In the prairies, I felt pretty lost. Not so much my place. So it all forms us, right? It forms us. The waters wash us.
Mm-hmm.
The rocks wash us.
Yeah.
The waters wash us. I think the Norse, or living off the grid, what I really appreciated was have no phone. Because when we had something to say, we had to go to the person. And then when we were at the person's place, we didn't just talk about what we wanted to know. We obviously had a visit, and all kinds of other things came up.
Yeah.
So I think that might be a little lost too for our younger generation. They can connect instantly all the time with anybody they want, but they nearly need to make a message appointment to go visit somebody. Like I even heard that it's rude to just call. That you need to make an appointment to call someone. Like as in a text message, is it okay to call you?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there is no more spontaneity really. And the joy of somebody just popping in and you make room for a cup of tea.
Yeah. It's
Right.
not part of the culture so much anymore. The
Yeah.
idea that you could just drop by. People wouldn't be ready if you came to make tea, probably.
Right. But can't you as an individual just be always ready for a tea?
Well, it depends how stocked your house is even, or like how. I don't even know
Right.
if people keep their houses stocked the same way for guests. Just briefly introduce yourself and
Okay.
kind of your story generally, and then we can build from there.
Well, my name is Maja now. Used to be Oberholzer. I'm Swiss. As a young person, I finished my apprenticeship and wanted to travel like most young people. Wanted to actually go to India. My mother wouldn't allow me, so I ended up finding somebody that went back to Canada. So I tagged along and I hitchhiked from Gander, Newfoundland to Vancouver Island.
Wow.
I had 6 months
Amazing.
and I had $3.50 a day, and it was very little even in 1977.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful. I would say about 2.5 months out of the 6 months I was invited to other people's places and had a very good experience with Canadians and Canada, and was blown away by the space.
Yeah.
By how much space and how many trees and how many rocks. And we got our share of rocks and trees in Switzerland, but it's all tight where the people live.
Yeah.
So I just fell in love because space means to me tolerance. And I was a rebellious teenager, and Switzerland has a lot of laws. And one should not do this, one should not do that. You maybe have that in your culture too, because you're really tight as well, right? So as a young rebel, there's just no room for you. So you just have to just go. And then I wanted to build a house. As a 17-year-old, I had a dream that I wanted to build a house on the water. And open a door for my unborn kids, and they don't get driven over by a car. So, and I actually did that. Eventually came to Canada, worked, saved, bought land, went back to Switzerland, worked, saved, and started building a house. Came permanently in 1987 and started to build a 16 by 16 cabin. Shortly thereafter I had my first daughter, and eventually added on, made the house a little bigger. We had just wood, we had oil lamps, we had a well where we drew the water, We had to walk a kilometer to where the car was parked because there was no road that was plowed. So we usually in the wintertime went out once a week to do some laundry, to do a weekly grocery shop, to go to the library. That was my savoring, my mental health.
Yeah.
Was we had a very good librarian, and she let us take stacks of books out instead of just two per person.
Mm-hmm.
And so we made a good visit there and had all kinds of political conversations and all kinds of other conversations, but that was good, really good. My second mental health was Peter Zosky, CBC Radio. He had a way of connecting Canada with so many subjects. He's one of the best radio interviewer that CBC ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And he was definitely my lifeline. Oh, I thought you meant tea. Would make tea. Okay.
Water's good.
Anyway, so having children where they can't really go anywhere is the 16 by 16 cabin.
Yeah.
Is absolutely wonderful because they're always around you. So you teach them everything you do. If you bake, they bake. If you sew, they sew. If you weave, they weave. If the sun goes down, you have a few oil lamps, you eat supper, and then you go to bed and tell stories with two oil lamps that you have, and read and read and read. So you have time to go through tons of books and sing and do crafts and bake a lot and go for walks and forage in the bush in the summer. We did some cross-country skiing, but it's just a lot of together time.
Yeah. And where were you living geographically relative to, was that in this property or?
Yeah, on Manitoulin,
Mm-hmm.
8 kilometers north of the ferry, on South Bay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from here about
Mhm.
good 35-minute drive.
And so when did you first move into that place?
We built the shell in 1985 and moved permanently there in 1987, and
Mhm.
my daughter was born 1988.
Mm-hmm. And so you raised your daughters here and then
Over there, yeah.
over there, and then moved here after
Yes.
they were gone, kind of thing?
No,
Or after they had
I left that place in 2002
Mm-hmm.
because it became a little bit toxic because my husband became an alcoholic
Mm-hmm.
or slipped deeper into that disease.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry
Yeah.
to hear that.
Yeah. So it was just healthier to go. And
Mm-hmm.
off the grid to live by yourself when you no longer have two people pulling at the same wagon
Yeah.
is very, very hard. So I just got sick myself, just overworked and underappreciated, and it was
Yeah.
time to go. And I was lucky enough to find this place,
Mm-hmm.
and it already had a little bit of an organic garden over there,
Yeah.
and I maintained that. And then when I met Guy, the garden grew to what I imagined it
Yeah.
could be,
Mm-hmm.
which was really, really nice because he likes gardening and he's a very, very strong handyman Ken.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of fortunate. And we built a new dream. We literally sat down one day and, because none of this was, right? And I said, we have to make a dream together. Like, I believe it's nice to know your path is never straight, but it's nice to know to where you want to go.
Yeah.
Not necessarily where that will be, but about what it should be, so that you can make one step after another towards that. Because life is long and short, but if you follow that dream, you will get there.
Mm-hmm.
You have the power to get there, as
Yeah.
long as you don't crawl backwards.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's really impressive. Is there like, of all of your time spent kind of living off the grid, is there one kind of memory that really sticks out, or one thing that is really the most like memorable or special to you from that time?
The reading the books
Mm-hmm.
and the weaving, and just being super close of
Yeah.
a family.
The close knit.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned you homeschooled your kids until grade 3,
Mm-hmm.
and then they would have to go to the school. Was the school here in Windemoya?
Yeah, they went to CMPS in
Mhm.
Indemoya with a school bus.
Yeah.
And so it was a long ride, but yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And they liked it because they loved being with kids, right?
Yeah, it's a good social
And so my
opportunity.
first one I did homeschool till grade 3. It was actually grade 2, but she skipped the grade
Oh, yeah.
right away because she went to grade 2 the first day. She came home after 3 days and said, "Mom, I can do the back page of the math book." And I'm going, "That's not good." So I went to the teacher and said, is there any other reason for her to be in this class versus in grade 3, because she knows the answer of the back book there, and that's not good. She's going to be bored and get into trouble. And so they skipped her a grade. And then with
Yeah.
my second one, they skipped her a grade.
Oh, wow.
So they were not necessarily especially smart kids. They were just schooled right
Yeah.
in their early years, right? And I think your country does schools right. Asia does a great job with their kids, and I think we're failing them. Canada is failing their kids.
Yeah.
What makes you say that about Canada?
I don't know. It's just what I see, what's produced, what they know, and how they behave in grade 10, 11, 12. It doesn't show maturity. They may have some knowledge that is way up there that I would never be able to solve, but just the normal commonsensical how to be with one another, and the normal math and the normal reading skills and the normal, they're not there. They don't even know how to give you change.
Yeah.
Unless they're cash registered, like they can't add 5 and 5. It's just the really, really basics. They might have all kinds of science thing, or I don't know what they know, because I'm sure they're taught something, but their living skills are, I don't know, they're not there. And their memory, like I teach ballet, right? This will be my 25th season, observing kids that are privileged because obviously they have parents that care enough to pay extracurricular activity. But 25 years ago to now, their memory capacity is just not there. I don't know why. Maybe because that's one part of the brain that's really, really, really not used at all. But when I teach them step sequences, unless I just tell them, hey, like I really go down on them and say, in 5 weeks is our show, you don't know the first 15 seconds of your dance that I showed you 5 times already, the whole dance. You don't know the first 10 seconds of it. How are you going to manage to know your dance? We only see each other 5 more times. So then they sort of wake up. But I don't know. We used to have to recite poems and, know our ABCs and know, sure, it's old school, right? But I don't think the brain is really challenged anymore. I don't know.
That's another thing that I and my parents felt about Canada. You said it was their space and it's free. The opposite of that is that kids have freedom like that. Some of them fall through.
Yeah.
Don't appreciate the discipline.
Yeah. And that's the thing. The disciplines have been lacking in many, many, many ways. And what gets me is then, thank you, Kai, really kind. When the discipline is missing, then you're not given the tools to follow your passion in an effective, good way, right? But then on the other hand, there is fabulous young people, and we have them here too. Then they want out of the rat race and they come to Manitoulin and they want to do whatever they want to do, and they are very innovative. Like that, our young people have. They have great ideas, huge innovative ideas, especially when it comes to saving the world in a green way. Fantastic, really admire it and support it too financially. Reaching out to invest in certain things that are not maybe mainstream.
Do you see a lot of young people doing things like that on Manitoulin Island? Or?
Yeah, we have a whole group that does permaculture. We have one guy that started doing kombucha. We have another girl that does soaps, natural soaps. We have a gardener that does organic gardening for others. Then we have a few carpenters that make non-conventional housing. Guy works for one of them. They do timber frame, they do straw bale houses, they do cordwood houses. So there is a lot of off-the-grid living going on Manitoulin, and resilience in many, many ways. The problem often is that when they come, they have a book knowledge of life here. And it takes them a long time, much longer than if they would have grown up with the knowledge given from their parents and naturally fall into. They would progress a lot faster than if they would have to reinvent the wheel here, right? Because they have to reinvent their knowledge wheel.
Yeah.
And that's kind of sad.
Do you find there's a sense of, or community or mentorship within the community, or they can come and like meet with other people in their same situation and learn together, or like teach each other things?
I think they do. Yeah, I think they do. There is groups in Wikwemicon. There's also groups that are coming that works through the health units, coming through grants. So there's a lot of community gardening that went on Manitoulin. You may be seeing it, little plots of gardens, some of which is community gardening. We have good food box going on. So there's a lot of innovated thought processes that have been going on, and some of which then came through and moved into more traditional, like coming through a paid person versus a volunteer, right?
Yeah.
Which there's nothing wrong with that. But I think a lot of people brought young ideas, volunteer base, and then it moved into another direction and continued in another direction. So that's kind of nice to see.
I didn't know, but I didn't know it before, but Manitoulin seems to be kind of a hub where that can really happen. And throughout Northern Ontario, I'm sure we'll find more things like that, where people really care about the environment or finding a different way to live. So it's been really cool to hear your story, and hopefully we'll find more people like that along the way.
There's another Swiss guy. He has a really interesting story too. Like he's a timber framer. He's Guy's boss, and he is a journeyman. So in Switzerland, like if you finished your carpentry apprenticeship, a 4-year apprenticeship, if you want to become a journeyman, then you have to be never closer than 50 kilometers to your home. You cannot be in a relationship, and you have to commit for 3 years to travel. Every 2 months you have to be in a different place for 3 years. And the idea is, because it used to be, and they have a certain pants and certain hats, so people know that you're a journeyman, and they take you off the street and say, hey, fix me this chimney, fix me this, make this window, this, make this, make this. And so then you learn all these different trades, because the housing used to be after each valley and each new mountain, the windows were done a little different, and the roof was done a little different, and so you would learn all these things, right? So he did the journeyman, and then he went 5 years around the world, all around the world.
Twice.
Never flew, never with a plane. So he's a very interesting story too.
That's amazing.
And they lived on the island of Leskidi, which is another completely alternative island, all of them off-grid, in British Columbia. But it's very damp, and his wife couldn't take the dampness, and she's from Massey, so they actually came here. Now he has a bison farm and a straw bale house.
Right here in
Yeah.
Manitoulin. Wow, that's so cool.
And then we have 2 friends that are from Russia, and they chose Manitoulin as their home. They're like in their early 30s, and he's a timber framer as well, and she's the gardener. So we all sort of hang out, and
really
they
cool.
have a really sweet story too. Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. There's a really cool movement going on out of Espanola, which is called Fiber Arts, and they do every year. They've started to make now a really huge show about it. There is some great stuff going on in Timmins. The group is called Radical Garden, and they're doing a fantastic job up there in regards to the food movement and the gardening. And there's a lady out of Sault Ste. Marie, and she's really innovative. They both won some tourism awards in regards to having innovative thought and innovative ways of doing. Like, she knows the farmer that has the pig that she will later on serve, and promotes like the local meat movement into the local restaurants and all that. Yeah. So I think the North itself is so brutal. You have to become resilient in a way if you want to do other than mainstream, right?
Yeah. Really have to form community and
get
connected.
Yeah, like in the winter, if somebody stops and you drive by, you stop and you ask, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And if they say, "Good, okay, on you go," because if you don't ask, they might be in trouble, right? Because it's so cold. Yeah. And people help each other, because we have to. So then the neighbor, you try to be nice to your neighbor, because the saying goes, you be nice with your neighbor because you never know when you need them. And in the city, that's not like that.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
You have a million neighbors.
You choose your friends.
Yeah.
And here, you are friends with who is. That therein lays the difference. And I think that sort of friendship actually washes you better, because if you only surround yourself with like-minded people, you don't really know where you are in life, right? Because you don't bounce off of other people that say, "No, not like that," right?
Definitely.
But here you have to sort of try to get along. I mean, don't get me wrong, my friends also are like-minded, right? We're all going towards that.
Yeah.
But I also have to deal with the person that is not like-minded at all and happens to be the neighbor, right?
And in the city, you could just not connect with those people.
You just avoid them. Yeah.
So do you think there is a greater than sense of community, or not necessarily even greater, but do you think that community actually like helps support resilience more than like what you might see in a city?
Yes, but I do think if a city reaches calamity, they hold together too. They find easily back. Humanity finds back to that, right? As soon as a real catastrophe approaches a place of where you would never talk to your neighbor, never help him, but if the flood is there and he's in the third floor and you have a boat, you're gonna go get him, right?
Yeah.
So I think if we're really hard up, but if we don't have to, we don't. That's the thing.
Yeah.
We're so complacent.
Yeah.
We're so complacent.
I definitely agree with that. I see that complacency even in my own life. Just like if I have the option not to connect with someone, and it's easier for me, sometimes I won't. Yeah. And that definitely, I can see how that when you're in the north, you can't be so complacent necessarily.
No.
That's really cool.
It makes life easier. Yeah. And in one way, like Guy always says, like, Guy is my social butterfly, right? I'm sort of like the city person in the back, right? Leave me alone, kind of, right? Another person wants to talk to me. And he's out there sweeping in a little driveway and loves it because everybody says hello, and he shares another 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes with them or more. Anyway, and he loves knowing and being known and getting "Hi, Guy," and talking, and so he loves being greeted and known. And it's nice too. I mean, it's nice when you know that if you really, really hard up, if people know you, they will help you if you reach out. We don't reach out because we don't need help. But when we really, really have to, if you don't know nobody, who are you going to reach out to? Social services, right, is your place to go. But family, but in the north, often we don't have family close by. My closest family is in Sudbury and in Cochrane, 7-hour drive. Well, if I need help right now, I can call neither one of them. Right? So then you need your neighbor or your friend or something close by. In the city, it's similar, right? The distances can be great, even though you're relatively closer. but it's still going to take you 2 hours to get to you. So if you really need help, where are you going to go? To the next door neighbor that you never said hello to is going to be difficult,
Yeah.
right?
I love the idea of how catastrophe or need really brings us people together and forces people to change in a way. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on how you think people will have to change in the coming future to respond to some of the crises or things that people are facing around the world.
We've been neglecting nature for so long and exploiting it, using it, soiling it, stomping on it. I believe there will be a day where we will start to realize that we have to bow and appreciate and nurture and become extremely humble in regards to this place that we call home, that right now it speaks in the wind, right? But we don't listen. And I would say 60 years ago, right now we would have heard birds. We don't hear them. 150 years ago, it would have been full of it. We don't hear them. We have birds in this garden but still not as many as we should, right? So I think the earth, it will become so critical for us. There will be such a calamity in regards to what's left to be had to survive, that we will have to learn really, really quickly to be really, really humbly smart and treat her well so she can give what she's there to give. The world gives. If we treat it just right, it keeps giving fish, it keeps giving vegetables, it keeps giving air, it keeps giving water. If we just wouldn't pollute it and exploit it so bad, right? There would be, if people would garden like this, as intensive as this, we wouldn't know where to go with the food, right? We have so much, the world has so much ability to give. We would have no starving people anywhere in the world, because you could plant the whole of Sahara in no time would be green, right? Well, if there would be a will to plant that thing, oh my goodness, what did they do in India? How many trees did they do in one day? Millions and millions, and they had where there was a will, there was a way. Every person planted 12 trees, they have a hell of a lot of people. Bingo! Millions! Had to be coordinated, right?
Yeah.
And you had to have the seedlings and all that. But they did it.
That's true, yeah.
Where there's a will, there's a way, right? Or this other young guy that did in the city, he put things that go like this between the cars.
Yeah.
So this goes this way, and the thing goes forever. Energy. The whole city.
Oh, wow.
Right? So simple, right? It's a simple, the simplest mechanism there, right? Would cost you nothing to do that. Where there's a will, there's a way. And there's these innovative, there's tons of innovative ideas that way that the young people have. All it takes is these old folks to invest in it and not go the good old fossil fuel way. Right?
Yeah.
And if once they no longer invest there, once they invest in the other, it will catapult so quickly, right?
Yeah, it's just getting that sense of
Critical mass.
the shared value, the shared connection about it,
Yeah.
to get it started. And then once
The
it's rolling,
appreciation.
it's rolling. Yeah.
Because the rich people of the world are still breathing, are not hungry, are breathing well, sleeping well, eating well, and don't have a problem. When they all get a problem, that's when you will see investment switch.
Yeah.
Right? When it gets onto their skin, their grandchild, their families, their right?
Was there anything, if you had to pick one thing, would you have anything you would pick as your favorite thing about Manitoulin?
It lets me have a big garden.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's available in many places.
No, as a Swiss, it's not.
Well, you're not in Switzerland.
Yeah. But for me, it lets me have a big garden. My favorite thing on Manitoulin,
Or favorite thing about Manitoulin?
favorite thing about Manitoulin, well, it provided me with a hope and opportunities. It provides a lot of opportunities because there is so much yet to be had. You know what I mean? Like there is so much need in so many ways, which creates opportunity. So you can shine with very little.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Like our kids, you know, like if they're good in anything, they're always in the newspaper, right? You know what I mean? Like in Toronto, you better have like this mega awesome thing going if you want to make it into the paper. Not so much on Manitoulin. Not that you really want to shine, but you know what I mean. Like it really provides opportunities, and if you wanna be making a difference politically, you can, because it's a community of 1,000 people. There's so much needed, so much help, so much assistance, so much even municipal assistance, like for municipal councillors. They have such a workload, and if you want to make a difference, if you want to, like I'm heavy duty into creating parks and preserving parks, and Guy is into it, and we created all that beautiful road, that 540 there, brand new road, the paved shoulders, that's because of Guy and me.
Wow.
So in 2010 we started lobbying for paved shoulders for safety, road safety, and then it catapulted over and over and over and over and over with much effort and with a board and with an incorporated non-for-profit into attracting cycle tourism. That is now a significant component of Manitoulin's tourism.
Amazing. Just takes a couple like interested people and a bit of passion and time,
Yes.
and you can do a big thing.
Yes.
Because you have space. It's like in a garden. If you plant everything too close, some of the things are going to suffer as a result.
Yeah.
And then here you have more space to grow, I guess,
Yeah.
as a person.
But I wouldn't undermine that and be discouraged by maybe having to spend time in a city, because that exact same thing applies in a city. If you have a passion and you put in time and you are not working for your own good, this passion is not to make you rich. This passion is for the greater good. You will find like-minded people to help you, and you will open doors.
Yeah.
And you can make such a big difference in anywhere. If it's for the greater good of all, if it's not about you, people will help you. People will open doors. But as
Yeah.
soon as you go retreat to yourself and it's all about you, you have a hard time, rightly so, for people helping you. Because if it's about you, then help yourself.
That's a good. That's a really good point.
That's a good thing.
If you want to be selfish, then be so. Door shut.
Is that a Swiss saying? Matt's grandparents, they're Dutch, so they have a lot of Dutch sayings like that. that they'll
Yeah.
say in Dutch.
Yeah, no, it's more like a life experience, right? Like we have a lot of municipal things that we do, so we sit in municipal meetings often, and you don't see many other people come to these meetings, right? Everybody's doing their own thing, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But when you do see them, when they do come, it's always about an endeavor about themselves, their land or their trailer or what they want to build or what they don't want to build or whatever. It's always about them. And as soon as they have solved their problem, they're gone again and no longer interested. And so why should municipality listen to you or to anybody if it's about you? And that applies to anything, right? It just, yeah, it's just like our pharmacy. He's giving out now opioid daily supplies to inflicted people since 2 years. And ever since they started that, there's a lot of theft going on and whatnot. And he just goes, well, when you approach him, it's part of doing business. What is it? It's part of doing business for you, because you make a hell of a lot of money giving them their daily doses. But the rest of us, we're just dealing with the problem, right? That creates. They had a interesting CBC documentary this morning on the radio about that, and how the opioid crisis is huge in Canada.
It is. It's hit Canada very hard.
Incredibly huge. What the pharmaceutical industry has created by giving it to the doctors.
Yeah.
And then the doctors have obviously also abused it. And then the people have abused it.
Yeah.
And now we have thousands and millions of people. I don't know how many there is. Do you know the number?
Definitely.
It's an incredible amount.
There's been
right?
thousands, like almost, I think 9,000 or 6,000 people dead from it since
Right.
since 2010 or something.
Yeah.
And thousands affected for sure. It's
Mishandled.
It's been very mishandled, and like even from the get-go, my parents are physicians, so I talked to them a bit about it. When they were in medical school in the 80s and the early 90s, the drug companies would say, oh, these are completely safe.
Yeah.
You can use these for anything. Your patients will love it. It'll help with so many different pain issues.
Yeah.
And the doctors were kind of misled initially by the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah.
And then by the time people figured out how addicting they were, it was already too late, because a lot of people were stuck on them. And a lot of doctors had their own habits that they developed.
Yeah,
and weren't
that's
able
right.
to get off.
And they gave incentives too for a long time.
They did,
right?
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's
Well, they
a-
just had a big trial in the States, right? With the pharmaceutical company. So it will be interesting to see if that's going to happen here too.
But yeah, definitely. My parents were telling me the initial marketing towards doctors was that, like, you can use this for anything. It's like a miracle pain cure.
And it was.
Until
It is,
until it
right?
addicted people. And killed
It
so many.
absolutely is. I mean, it's the best pain medicine there is, especially for acute injury pain, right? But how do you handle it, and how soon are you going to take them off for that, and right?
Exactly.
I mean, if I come with a sawed-off arm, yeah, probably a good thing, right? But maybe a week later, maybe something else should kick in.
Yeah. And some people are pushing, like some patients are pushing back too now. Like a patient will be afraid of having any opioids because they don't want to get addicted.
Yeah.
So it's caused a lot of, like, even anxiety on the patient end. Like if you come in to the emergency room with an injury, oh, don't give me any of those. 'cause I don't wanna get
Yeah.
addicted.
So you can't help them
Yeah.
for when they when they should have it for the short period.
Yeah.
It's
Hopefully, we can get back, when we get back home to Hamilton, or that's a huge issue too.
Yeah.
We can see some of that and help address some of that.
yeah.
Definitely, yeah. Wow. Do you have any other thoughts or questions from this conversation?
It's been so
Yeah.
much fun.
It's really.
Well, thank
very
you for
amazing to
giving
meet.
me time, and it was very interesting to see that the way you approached this and the way you came up with the thought of getting the grant. Kudos to you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for hosting us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
really
been a real
it's a
pleasure.
sweet thing, and